For more on the conflict and challenges, let's go to Mary Louise Eagleton. She's the Deputy Representative for UNICEF in Sudan and joins us now from Port Sudan. Thank you very much for your time, first of all. Now, the UN warns that war crimes are possibly being committed, as we know, based on findings of first-hand testimony from 182 survivors, family and members and eyewitnesses. What kind of crimes are we talking about here?
Well, Sudan is a living nightmare for its 24 million children, and children are facing all sorts of protection crises as a result of this war, including recruitment into armed groups, killing and maiming of tens of thousands of children. And what we have documented is really just the tip of the iceberg. They are subject to displacement at massive levels. Over 5 million children around the country have had to flee their homes. And gender-based violence, sexual gender-based violence is at a really, really significant high, especially in the areas of active conflict where fighting is ongoing.
UN experts have called for an independent and impartial force in Sudan, as well as arms embargo to protect civilians. This is something Sudan has rejected. Why has it rejected it? And can the UN enforce it? What would that entail?
So I can't speak as to why it would be rejected, but having a protection force or protecting civilians is really paramount in this war and in this crisis. The levels of abuses against the population is severe, as I've mentioned, and it's critical that all sides in this conflict are respecting international humanitarian law and protecting civilians.
And do you feel that the UN is the only body that is able to do it at this point with some kind of force, as they say? Is that the kind of protections you're talking about?
So at UNICEF, we work with all partners to protect civilians, and especially children and women. Having an international protection force or some sort of neutral protection force could help civilians, but ultimately the fighting needs to stop. A ceasefire needs to happen, and civilians need to be protected in this environment.
We've been here before, though, haven't we? I mean, realistically, is there any solution? Will fighting stop? How does fighting stop? And how do you enforce a kind of, neutral body to support civilians?
The parties need to come to the table, and the international community around the world need to help bring the parties to the table to find a solution and find a way to end this war and end the fighting. And that's urgent. We have 14 million children in critical need of humanitarian support. We have a famine that has been reported, the first in many years globally, and millions of children's lives at stake if there isn't immediate ceasefire, first of all, and humanitarian aid access to be able to reach the most critical children in need of this humanitarian support. We're going to see the situation get even worse for the millions of children suffering in the midst of this war.
Mary Louise Eagleton, really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.